Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you that will help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. And at the time of recording this, we are in the corona crisis, which is causing a lot of people to be struggling even more than usual when it comes to food and when it comes to binge eating or eating too much. And so I've created my 5 top tips for how to stop binge eating. And this is me bringing together the best of what I know and what I've seen works. So we will start with number 1, which is don't restrict. And by restriction, I mean when you are consciously trying to eat in a deficit. That's it. When you're trying to eat less than you actually need because perhaps you want to lose weight, and I understand people's concerns around that at the moment. A lot of people are feeling really anxious about weight gain at this time when we are required to stay in our homes and move much less than usual. But weight loss actually creates stress in the body, and the body can cope with it quite well most of the time, providing it's not a really severe weight loss. But it is a stress on the body, and at the moment a lot of us are experiencing a lot of stress as well, so it's kind of a double whammy, and it's just not what your body wants right now. Your body wants to be taken care of and nourished, and the problem is if you continue to try to restrict, you're going to keep triggering urges to binge, so you're going to be fighting with those urges a lot more. That is the cost of restriction. And everybody gets to make a choice that's right for them, but just notice if this is a cost that keeps coming up for you, because for a lot of people, that's what happens. And number 2 is to break the cycle. Now, quite a few of you might have seen something like this, which is the binge eating cycle, and you can see how the different stages lead to the other one and it perpetuates it, and you end up in a vicious cycle and it's hard to break out of. So if you look at those stages, it's trying to figure out where you might be able to break the cycle if you're stuck in it at the moment. And a lot of people, they want to break the cycle at the binge point. They want to be like, well, I just want to not binge and that's where I'll break the cycle. But the problem is the desire to binge is being driven by an overwhelming desire to eat. So when people binge, afterwards they feel so out of control, they feel ashamed. And when we feel so out of control, it seems like the answer is to try and gain control. So then people, they plan what they're going to do next after a binge. They plan what tomorrow is going to look like. And it's normally on the restrictive side. So they're telling themselves they won't have this and they won't have that because they think that's what they need to do to get themselves under control. But actually that leads to feelings of deprivation, which then triggers the next binge. So in actual fact, we want to change the way we respond after the binge. That's when we have a bit more autonomy. That's when we have a little bit more clarity because we're not fighting with urges. So how do you break the cycle, I hear you ask? That nicely brings me on to number 3. And number 3 is to focus on what you want. Now, when people want to stop binging, what do they tend to focus on? They tend to focus on stopping binging. So all their thoughts are around don't binge, how do I not binge, I don't want to binge later, now I'm feeling stressed because I want to binge, and binge, and food, that's what they're thinking about all the time. But if you weren't binging, what would you be doing instead? So rather than focus on what the behaviour is that you're trying to stop, what is it that you're trying to create in its place? Because there needs to be something, otherwise there's a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. It doesn't like it, so it will try to fill it with something, and that's when you get people moving on to using other things. And so by focusing on what you want, like say if you are somebody who binges in the evenings a lot, what do you want your evenings to look like instead? If you weren't binging, in your mind's eye, think about creating an image of what that would look like instead. Because without the binging, if it's something you do regularly in the evening, like what are you going to do? So I think it's important to think these things through. And a lot of people do struggle in the evenings, and there's biological reasons for that, but that's another video. But yeah, focus on what it is that you want to create instead of binge eating. Recovery from binge eating can be a creative process. It's about having something better, not about losing something. And number 4, which is one of my favourites, and I go on about this one a lot, and that is to feel your feelings. And if you sit with the question now, what am I afraid to feel? And just notice what bubbles up for you when you think of that question. What is it that I am afraid of feeling? Because if you weren't afraid of feeling anything, stopping binging would be easy. It really would, because you wouldn't care about that urge to binge. You wouldn't catastrophize it. Like, whatever these feelings are that are behind the urge to binge, assuming it's not just restriction, because the biology is in this as well. But let's say you use food emotionally. Like that question, like, how do I feel my feelings more? Because feelings, they want to be felt. That is their job. And when we keep stuffing them down with food, they just keep bubbling up again. And we end up stuck in this sense where then we feel like we've got this big well of feelings that if we allowed ourselves to start feeling them, we would be completely overwhelmed by them. And actually, for most people, that just isn't the case. And even if it's just for you about experiencing your feelings a bit first. So if you are using food to cope with anxiety, can you experience some of the anxiety for a little bit longer before you reach for the food? Almost like building up a tolerance to managing your emotions and accepting that we've got them, because binge eating can be a way of saying, I refuse to accept this is how I'm feeling. And when we do accept how we're feeling, they feel uncomfortable sometimes. They don't feel great for the majority of us. But when we accept them, we're not spinning a catastrophic story about these feelings and what they mean that we're feeling them. They start to become much more bearable. And we can change our relationship with our feelings, and that will have a knock-on effect with our relationship with food if food and emotions are really kind of tied up together for you. And my final one is to access resources and support. So a lot of people in this time of social distancing have a bit more time with themselves. That might not be the case for you. You might be in a household with a lot of people and maybe you don't have the time for yourself. But so if you are looking for books, for example, here I've got 6 of my favourite books, which I always recommend to people who struggle with binge eating. And I'm going to do a video on these books this week. So that will be out in a couple of days and you can look out for that. This corona thing couldn't have happened at a better time if it was going to happen, because we have so many resources out there. There are so many amazing podcasts out there for personal development or more spiritual development, if that's your kind of thing. One of my favourites is one called the Life Coach Podcast, and Brooke, the host, did a really good series when all the corona stuff was breaking out about handling chaos. And she released one every day, and I listened to that every day, and it really helped me to feel grounded and to not feel too panicked about what's going on. That doesn't mean I feel comfortable about what's going on, but I feel much calmer about what's going on. So we can take in from the outside world all these resources and all this information. There's so many people creating brilliant content out there, and getting the support as well. So there's a lot of online communities. I've thoroughly enjoyed using social media on this and connecting with other professionals as well who are in a similar field to me, who are trying to put out content to people that help them to heal their relationship with food. And there's some brilliant groups on Facebook. There's one called, I think it's Intuitive Eating Support Group in Facebook, and that's really lovely. It's really respectful, and people support each other on their journey and their struggles with intuitive eating. And if you can't find the kind of group that you want, set one up. If it doesn't exist and you're looking for it, chances are that there's someone else out there as well who could benefit from the kind of theme or topic you would like to start creating a community around. So there's a lot of support and help out there. And I'm going to be setting up a couple of online binge eating therapy groups. So if you're interested in joining one of my therapy groups online, reach out, get in touch. They're going to be starting in April 2020. So probably next week I'm hoping to have the first one up and running. So get in touch if that interests you. And also if you just want to tell me how you're getting on at this time, you know, I'm always more than happy to enter into a dialogue and hear what's going on for you and support you if I can. So on that note, go well, and I will see you on the next video.